There is a clock built into the tissue of your face, and it does not tick in years, it ticks in decades. Between 40 and 50, the tissue that holds your midface in position loses roughly 15% of its capacity to remodel. Between 50 and 60, another 20%. By 70, the window for meaningful structural change through passive intervention has narrowed to almost nothing. And the reason I am telling you this right now, at the beginning of this video, rather than saving it for some dramatic reveal, is because the intervention I am going to walk you through today takes 45 seconds. 45 seconds, done consistently, inside a window that is still open for you. The muscle involved is one you have probably never thought about in relation to your face. It sits deep in your calf, behind the larger muscle you can see, and it is called the soleus. Press into the back of your lower leg right now. Not the meaty part you feel first, but deeper, closer to the bone. That dense, firm tissue underneath, that is the muscle I am talking about. In the fact that pressing a muscle behind your shin could have anything to do with the structure of your cheekbone sounds on its surface like it belongs in a different conversation entirely. But it belongs in this one. And by the time you understand why, you will also understand why every cream, every roller, every injection you have ever tried was working on the wrong end of the problem. The conversation around facial structure right now is enormous. It is louder than it has been in decades. Social media is filled with facial exercises, lymphatic drainage tutorials, gua sha techniques, microcurrent devices, and an entire industry of injectables promising to restore what time has taken. And every single one of those approaches shares a common assumption: that the face is the site of the problem, and therefore must be the site of the solution. If your midface is dropping, the logic goes, you intervene at the midface. You fill it, you lift it, you massage it, you exercise it. It is a reasonable assumption. It is also the reason most of these approaches produce results that are temporary, inconsistent, or invisible to anyone who is not the person staring into a bathroom mirror at close range. This is not a video that dismisses those approaches entirely. Some of them address real components of the problem. Volume loss is real. Collagen decline is real. Lymphatic sluggishness is real. But there is a structural question that none of those approaches can answer, and it is this: if the tissue that holds your midface in position is connected through continuous fascial sheets to tissue that runs down the back of your skull, down your spine, through your pelvis, down the back of your legs, and into the bottoms of your feet, then why would you only treat the face? The reason is historical, and understanding that history is the first step toward understanding why this gap exists. When modern anatomy was formalized in the 19th century, the body was divided into regions for study. The head and neck went to one department, the trunk went to another, the limbs went to a third. This was an organizational decision, not a biological one. The body does not recognize departmental boundaries. Tissue does not stop at the border of a textbook chapter. But the medical and cosmetic industries that grew out of those academic divisions inherited the boundaries. Dermatology studied the skin of the face. Orthopedics studied the bones of the back. Physiotherapy studied the muscles of the legs. And the continuous fascial system that links all three was for over a century administratively invisible. Not because nobody could see it on a dissection table, they could. The sheets of connective tissue are plainly visible when you open the body. But the research infrastructure was not designed to study connections, it was designed to study regions. And so the connection between your calf and your face was technically known, but practically ignored. Studied in isolation at each end, but never followed as one continuous line. The clinical relevance of that blind spot is what this video is about. When I first started paying attention to the relationship between distal body mechanics and facial structure, I was not looking for it. I was reviewing posture assessments and noticing a pattern that made no anatomical sense under the regional model. People who had better calf engagement, measured by their ability to sustain a seated calf raise for more than 20 seconds, consistently presented with better midface definition. Not dramatically, not overnight transformation, just a subtle but measurable difference in the angle of the tissue beneath the cheekbone. The correlation was strong enough to be uncomfortable because the regional model had no mechanism to explain it. And when something is clinically visible but theoretically inexplicable, you have two options. You dismiss the observation or you follow it. I followed it. What I found is that the anatomy supports a direct, continuous tissue pathway from the soleus to the midface. Not through voluntary muscle contraction traveling up a chain of muscles, but through tension traveling along a continuous fascial sheet. And I want to be precise about this because this is where most of the confusion lives. The mechanism is not muscular in the way people expect. You do not contract your calf and feel a pull at your face. The mechanism is tensional. When the soleus contracts and holds, it generates tension in the fascial sheath surrounding it. That tension does not stop at the calf. It travels upward through the continuous connective tissue along the back of your leg, through the tissue behind your knee, up the back of your thigh, through the connective tissue in your lower back, up along your spine, over the back of your skull, across the top of your head through a tough sheet of tissue that covers the scalp, and connects to the tissue layer that wraps forward over your forehead and down to the bone beneath your cheekbones. This is one continuous sheet, one unbroken highway of tissue. And the soleus is its most distal anchor point on the posterior side. I need you to understand what that means in practical terms. So I am going to describe the pathway without any comparisons, without any metaphors, and without abbreviation, because the anatomy itself is more convincing than anything I could compare it to. Start at the bottom. The soleus sits deep beneath the visible calf muscle. Its lower end attaches to the back of your shin bone and the top of your heel bone through the Achilles tendon. Its upper end blends into the fascia behind your knee. That fascia is continuous with the connective tissue wrapping the muscles of the back of your thigh. Follow that tissue upward and it merges with the thick fascial sheet in your lower back, the dense connective tissue layer that you can feel if you press your thumbs into the area just above your pelvis on either side of your spine. That sheet continues upward along your spine, thinning as it rises but never breaking, connecting to the fascia that wraps the muscles running alongside your vertebrae. At the base of your skull, this tissue anchors to the bone, the bump you can feel if you run your fingers up the back of your neck until you reach the ridge at the bottom of your skull. From that ridge, the tissue continues over the skull as a fibrous sheet, thin but remarkably strong, covering the top and sides of your head. That sheet extends forward across your forehead, and here is the critical point. It is continuous with the deep tissue layer of your face. The layer that sits beneath your skin, beneath your fat, right on the bone. The layer that determines where your midface sits relative to the underlying skeletal structure. From your calf to your cheekbone, through a single continuous tissue system with no interruption and no gap. That is established anatomy. It is not a theory. It is not an alternative model. It is what you see when you follow the tissue from one end to the other without stopping at departmental boundaries. Now here is where the soleus becomes specifically important, rather than just another muscle in the chain. The soleus has two properties that no other muscle in the posterior chain shares in combination. First, it is a tonic muscle, meaning it is designed for sustained contraction, not quick bursts. It can hold a contraction for minutes without fatiguing, the way your bicep or your quad would. Second, it functions as a venous pump. Every time the soleus contracts, it compresses the deep veins running through the calf and pushes blood upward toward the heart. This is why researchers in cardiovascular physiology have called it the second heart. Not because it has anything to do with cardiac function directly, but because its pumping action is responsible for a significant portion of venous return from the lower body. Here is why the venous pump matters for your face. When venous return from the lower body improves, overall circulatory efficiency improves. One measurable consequence of better circulatory efficiency is reduced fluid retention in the tissues of the face. The puffiness that many people attribute to aging, to sodium intake, or to poor sleep is in many cases partially a consequence of poor venous return. The face sits at the top of the body. Fluid that should be moving downward pools in the tissue. The Soleus pump helps move it. So the Soleus contributes to midface position through two simultaneous mechanisms: fascial tension traveling up the posterior chain, and vascular improvement reducing facial tissue congestion. One structural, one circulatory, both arriving at the same destination. This is not something the face-only approach can address. You cannot improve Soleus pump function by massaging your jawline. You cannot generate posterior chain fascial tension by doing facial exercises. And you cannot restore a continuous tissue system by intervening at only one end of it. Which brings us to the current moment and why the conversation around facial structure is, in my assessment, incomplete. There are three views of the midface that deserve examination, and I want to be fair to each of them before telling you which one I think the evidence supports most strongly. The first view is dermatological. It holds that midface descent is primarily a consequence of volume loss, collagen degradation, and changes in the fat pads beneath the facial skin. This view is supported by decades of research into skin aging and by the visible result of volume restoration through fillers. It is a genuine view, and it addresses genuine processes. Its limitation is that it treats the face as a closed system. It cannot explain why two people with identical levels of collagen decline and fat pad distribution can have measurably different midface positions. It cannot explain the correlation between posterior chain function and facial structure. And it cannot explain why some people who receive fillers see their results diminish faster than the filler itself degrades. The second view is muscular. It holds that the muscles of the face can be strengthened through exercises, and that this strengthening can improve facial contour. This view is partially supported. The muscles of the face do respond to resistance, but the muscles of the face are thin, flat, and designed for expression, not for structural support. They are not load-bearing muscles. Asking them to lift a structure that is being pulled down by a chain of tissue extending the full length of the posterior body is asking them to fight a force they were never designed to resist. The third view is structural. It holds that the face is the terminal end of a whole body tensional system, in that interventions at distal anchor points, particularly along the posterior chain, can influence facial position through transmitted tension and vascular improvement. This view is the youngest. It does not have a century of cosmetic research behind it. What it has is anatomy that is plainly visible, a mechanism that is physiologically sound, and clinical observations that are consistent and reproducible. I am going to tell you where I stand. The third view is the one the anatomy supports. The other two views are not wrong, but they are incomplete. They address components of the system while ignoring the system itself. And within the third view, the Soleus is the most powerful entry point. Not the only one, but the most powerful, because it combines the structural tensioning with the venous pump function, and because it is the most chronically disengaged muscle in the modern human body. Think about your average day. How many hours do you spend sitting? When you sit, what happens to your ankles? They bend. Your feet go flat on the floor or tuck under the chair. The Soleus shortens, slackens, and essentially switches off. It is not contracting. It is not pumping. It is not generating tension for hours, every day, for years. The chain that connects your calf to your face has lost its anchor. The lowest point of the system is no longer pulling the tissue taut, and the consequence shows up at the highest point. Slowly, over decades, but visibly. Your midface did not fall because something went wrong at your face. Your midface fell because the bottom of the chain stopped doing its job. Now, there is something I should address before I walk you through the protocol, because this is where the practical distinction matters. Everyone likes the idea that you can compare the body to a musical instrument, that tuning one part brings the whole thing into harmony. And there is a version of that comparison that would work here. But the version most people reach for gets the direction wrong. When you tune a guitar, you adjust the tuning peg at the top to change the pitch of the string at the bottom. The correction travels downward. The body's posterior chain works the opposite way. You adjust the anchor at the bottom, the soleus, and the correction travels upward. If I said your body is a guitar, you would instinctively think top down. And that instinct is the exact mistake the dermatological view makes. The direction matters more than the comparison. Bottom up, that is how this chain works. There is a financial parallel that is equally inverted and equally useful. Conventional investment logic says you diversify at the top of the portfolio. You manage the visible assets, the ones you check daily. But experienced portfolio managers will tell you that the health of a portfolio is determined by its foundation. The boring, unglamorous base assets that nobody looks at. When the foundation is strong, the visible assets perform better without any additional management. When the foundation is neglected, no amount of top-level adjustment compensates. Your face is the visible asset. Your soleus is the foundation. The cosmetic industry has been managing the portfolio from the top. The chain says, manage it from the bottom. Before I give you the protocol, I want you to answer 3 questions. Your answers will determine which version of the protocol is right for your current level of engagement. First question, sit in a chair with your feet flat on the floor. Now, keeping your toes on the ground, try to lift just your heels as high as you can. Hold that position. If you can hold it for 20 seconds without shaking or cramping, your soleus has baseline engagement. If you cannot hold for 20 seconds, your soleus has been disengaged longer than you realize. Second question, with your heels lifted, press one hand into the back of your calf, below the wider muscle, into the deeper tissue. Is the tissue firm and responsive, or does it feel soft, almost spongy? Firm and responsive means the soleus is contracting. Soft and yielding means it is present, but not recruiting properly. Third question, while holding the raised heel position, check your posture. Did your spine straighten when your heels lifted? Did your head shift backwards slightly, coming more over your shoulders instead of forward of them? If yes, the chain is responsive. Your soleus activation is already communicating upward. If your posture did not change, the chain is present, but the communication is muted. Group 1, you could hold 20 seconds. The tissue was firm and your posture shifted. Your chain is responsive. The protocol will refine it. Group 2, you held for fewer than 20 seconds, or the tissue was soft, or your posture did not shift. What are 2 of the 3 indicators are present? Your chain needs reactivation. The protocol will be slightly more intensive for you. Group 3, you could not hold. The tissue was soft and your posture did not change. Your chain has been dormant. The protocol will start at a foundational level and build. The protocol is the same movement for all 3 groups. The difference is in duration and frequency. The 45-second soleus press. Sit in a chair, feet flat, shoes off. This matters because shoes dampen the proprioceptive feedback from your feet, and you need that feedback for the soleus to recruit fully. Your knees should be at roughly 90 degrees. Now, slowly raise your heels off the ground. Not fast, slowly. Take 3 seconds to lift them to their highest point. You will feel the deeper calf muscle engage, not the surface muscle, but the layer underneath. If you have difficulty distinguishing, press your fingers into the back of your calf while you lift. The muscle that firms up deeper than the one you first feel is the soleus. At the top of the lift, hold. Press into the floor through the balls of your feet. Not with maximum force, but with sustained, deliberate pressure. 70% of your maximum effort. This is not a strength exercise. This is a sustained contraction designed to generate continuous tension in the fascial sheath. Hold for 45 seconds. During those 45 seconds, 3 things are happening simultaneously. The soleus is generating sustained tension in its surrounding fascial sheath, and that tension is traveling upward through the continuous posterior chain. The soleus is compressing the deep veins in your calf, improving venous return, and reducing the fluid load in your upper body tissues. And the sustained contraction is sending proprioceptive signals up your spine, signaling your postural muscles to engage, which straightens your spinal column and shifts your head position backward over your shoulders. This head position change alone alters the tension on the tissue covering your skull and connecting to your midface. After 45 seconds, lower your heels slowly. 3 seconds down. Rest for 15 seconds. Repeat. For group 1, 3 repetitions once daily. Your chain is already responsive. This is maintenance and refinement. For group 2, 5 repetitions, twice daily, morning and evening. Your chain needs consistent reactivation signals. Within 2 weeks of consistent practice, you should be able to retest the diagnostic and see improvement in at least one of the 3 indicators. For group 3, 3 repetitions, 3 times daily, morning, midday, and evening. Shorter sessions, more frequent. Your chain has been dormant for long enough that it needs repeated activation signals throughout the day to reestablish the communication pattern. After 3 weeks, retest the diagnostic. When you can hold 20 seconds and feel the tissue firm up, move to group 2's protocol. One detail that matters more than people expect: what you do with your toes during the press. Keep them relaxed, not gripping the floor, not curled, not lifted, relaxed. When your toes grip, the superficial calf muscle takes over and the soleus disengages. Relaxed toes ensure the deep muscle is doing the work. If you catch your toes gripping, lower your heels, shake out your feet, and restart the repetition. What changes over the first week is subtle. You may notice that your calves feel different, firmer, more present, as though you have rediscovered a muscle you forgot you had. You may notice that your posture shifts slightly, your shoulders settling back without conscious effort. You may notice, especially in the morning, that your face looks less puffy, particularly around the eyes and the tissue below the cheekbones. That is the venous pump beginning to do its work. What changes over the first month is less subtle. The structural component takes longer because fascial remodeling is slow. Tissue does not reshape overnight. But around week 3, in many of the cases I have observed, the midface begins to show a slight but measurable change in position. Not a dramatic lift, not a surgical result, a subtle repositioning of the tissue beneath the cheekbone, a firming of the tissue between the cheekbone and the jawline, and a reduction in the heaviness that many people describe as their face falling forward. The measurement that correlates most reliably is the distance between the lower eyelid and the top of the cheekbone prominence. In cases I have tracked, that distance decreases by 1 to 2 millimeters over a 4-week period of consistent soleus press practice. 1 to 2 millimeters does not sound like much. On the face, it is the difference between looking tired and looking rested, between looking your age and looking like something shifted. The Connected Face Protocol, which I put together as a complete ebook with diagrams, takes this single exercise and places it within a sequence of 12 fascial release exercises that target every anchor point along the posterior chain. The soleus press is the foundation. The full protocol addresses the tissue behind the knee, the lower back junction, the base of the skull, and the scalp in a specific order designed to maximize the chain's response over 30 days. If the soleus press on its own produces the result you are looking for, you may not need the full sequence. But if you want the complete system in order, with tracking and labeled diagrams, the link is in the description or the pinned comment. Beyond the first month, the changes continue, but the rate depends on age, consistency, and the starting condition of the chain. I want to be direct about this. If you are over 65 and the chain has been dormant for 20 years, you will see changes, but they will be modest and gradual. If you are between 45 and 60 and the chain still has residual engagement, the results are faster and more pronounced. This is why the clock I mentioned at the beginning of this video matters. The window for fascial remodeling is real. It narrows. It does not close entirely, but it narrows. And the earlier you re-engage the chain, the more capacity you have to work with. There is a broader point here that I think is worth your time to consider, because it goes beyond one exercise and one muscle. The entire conversation around aging, around facial appearance, around what you can and cannot change after a certain age, has been dominated by approaches that treat the body in fragments. The face is one fragment, the back is another, the legs are another, and each fragment has its own industry, its own specialists, its own products, and its own limitations. What the fascial system reveals is that those fragments are connected by continuous tissue that does not care about specialty boundaries or product categories. Tension at the bottom influences structure at the top. Circulation in the legs affects fluid balance in the face. Posture in the spine determines the resting position of the skull, which determines the resting tension on the tissue of the scalp and forehead, which determines where the midface sits. Your body is one system. It has always been one system. The fact that we study it in pieces does not mean it operates in pieces. And the moment you start treating it as one connected structure, rather than a collection of independent zones, is the moment the interventions begin to make sense. The protocols become simpler because they work with the system instead of against the fragmentation. And the results become more durable because they address the root of the chain, not just its terminal expression. If you have watched this far, you have given me nearly an hour of your attention, and I do not take that lightly. What I would ask from you is small and specific. If this changed how you think about your face or your body or the connection between the two, leave a comment describing what you felt during the diagnostic assessment, which group you fell into, and whether the chain responded when your heels lifted. Those comments help other people decide whether to invest their time in this video, and they help me understand what questions need deeper exploration. If you want to see more of this kind of work, the deep chain investigations that nobody in the cosmetic space is talking about, subscribing is how you signal that. The ritual is this. Every evening, when you come home and take your shoes off at the door, that is the trigger. Shoes off, sit down, feet flat, heels up, 45 seconds. The doorway is the cue. The shoes coming off is the signal. The press follows the shoes the way brushing your teeth follows getting out of bed. You do not decide each night whether to do it. You just do it, because it is part of what happens when you walk through the door. The clock I described at the beginning of this video is real. It ticks in decades, not in days. But every decade is made of days. And every day that you re-engage the chain at its lowest anchor point is a day the clock encounters resistance. Your midface did not fall from the top. It released from the bottom. 45 seconds, the depth of your calf, the full length of the chain, the bones of your floor.